Rule 62 Studios in Bossier City, Louisiana, this is The Grouch and the Brainstorm. Welcome back. I'm Mike, and I'm here with Jill.
Hey, guys.
And Matt.
Hello.
And we have a special guest, and Jill's going to introduce our special guest.
Drum roll, please.
Oh, where's my drum roll button? Hang on. I don't know where it is. Hang, is that it? No, that ain't. All right, go ahead, Jill.
Well, drum roll. It's Jonathan.
Hey, y'all.
Welcome.
Oh, Jonathan.
Really glad to be here. Thank you, guys.
Pretty awesome. And so this is episode what, Matt?
79.
He has researched it again this week.
Took almost 80 episodes for me to figure out which one we're on, guys.
Episode 79. And prior to recording, Jonathan told us he hasn't told a story before.
Yes.
First
This is kind
time.
of the perfect place to do it.
Yeah.
You know, like we said, like practice here and then international speaker next.
Oh, yeah, you're going the circuit.
Next step.
The circuit, whatever the circuit is.
Yeah, what is a circuit?
I don't know. I've given my story at these conventions before, and they take you in this little room, and you're full of all these people they give you like a special lunch, and you're in there with all these people and from all over the country or world, and they've all done this a million times, and they know each other, and one's from Vegas and one's from Washington, and you're sitting there eating chips. And they're like, how many times have you? No, one. That's it.
You're not part of the 5-timers club yet.
Yeah, like they explains the tuxedo, so Jonathan, welcome.
Thank
you. I'm still looking for my drum roll button. I can't.
Well.
What worst case scenario, I accidentally hit a voicemail and we have to listen to the whole thing. So, but whenever we do this, tell the story, we make announcements after and talk about websites and all that other stuff. We kind of skip a whole lot of talking and we kind of let you do your thing, and then when you're done, however long it takes, doesn't matter. And then we'll segue into something different. So it's yours. Take it.
Sure, man. I appreciate it. And once again, I appreciate y'all having me and giving me this opportunity. I think this is a really important thing for me to do. And like I said before, I never seeked it out. But my name's Jonathan. I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since May 2nd of 2010, and that's my miracle. I'll say this kind of before I really kind of get into it. It is, and I've done a lot of really cool stuff since getting sober, but this is getting sober and living this life is the single greatest thing I'll ever do. And I bet you've heard that 100,000 times, but it's remarkable. The things that are able to be done, or the things that have been happening in my life since this journey. So, naturally I'll start from the beginning. I'll try to keep it clear and concise. And if the timeline jumps around, I'll try not to do that too much. But, grew up here in town. Got 2 older brothers, mom and dad, normal family life. Nothing real crazy, nothing real weird. I know that there's a lot of us that say, even as a little kid, I always knew that I was different. I don't know that I did, what I did know is that even really early on, I had this immense craving to be accepted and be involved and be a part of, right? Like that was probably the thing that I craved the most. Both my older brothers, we grew up, they had an NES. There was 2 remotes, right? They both played and I watched, I was like, but I really wanted to be included. And I remember that they would kind of leave when they were done playing and I would play by myself. I was like, well, this isn't as cool. I just wanted to be included, right? No, yeah. And that's just kind of early memories of, kind of doing that. And, I had good friends growing up. Nobody was ever into anything super crazy. But moving forward kind of into middle school, I remember hearing stories of, going through school, my oldest brother kind of got picked on a bit, right? He wasn't as cool as the other kids thought he should be. So therefore, my other brother coming up, he was naturally labeled that very same thing, right? So whenever I came up, what was I like? I was also labeled that very same thing. So I was kind of out to prove myself a little bit, right? I'm going to show you how cool I am. So for whatever reason, we get to middle school age, 12, 13. And I don't really remember my very first opportunity with a drink or a drug, but I do recall it happening 8th grade year, and I didn't really love it, but I also, and that may be what's different about me, right? I didn't have this like immense, like, oh man, I'm going to do that. Because it was a bit of an acquired taste, but the very first time I ever felt different or changed the way that I feel or felt, I knew that I liked it, and I knew that I wasn't scared of it, right? So, but I also knew that my other friends were kind of scared of it, and I kind of used that as like a badge of honor, if you will. They're like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to try a cigarette. I'm not going to have a beer. That's, that's bad. And we're talking 13, 14 years old, right? And I was like, oh, no, this is how I can elevate myself. And this was not a conscious thought at the time, but like, old Jonathan, he's not scared of anything. And then fast forward a little bit more, and that became a thing that me and my friend group did, is like we would steal a beer out of the fridge and we would just kind of split it and pass it around. And finding that pride or badge of honor, if you will, was something that I really enjoyed. Because people talked about us a little bit, right? They're the guys that are doing that thing. And, this was a little bit of the time when, I don't know if you guys remember the Jackass TV series.
Yeah. County Knoxville.
Yeah. But that was, we would get drunk and go film some stunts, right? And but we would have these viewing parties, right? And girls would come over.
Awesome.
I like this guy more and more.
Yes.
and girls would come over, and I was like, this is really cool, right? Yeah. And once again, the alcohol kind of facilitated those conversations, because I was never been confident, right? And I think that's super common amongst a lot of us. Like, we have these great attributes and abilities and whatnot, and like there's nothing wrong with us, but we think there probably is. And alcohol was kind of the great equalizer for me. For a long time, alcohol was not like a problem. I did it a bunch, like a whole bunch, but it never interfered with my studies. It never interfered with relationships. I was still hiding it from the people that I needed to hide it from. And then you kind of, and this is, granted, I'm 15 talking about this right now. Like, it wasn't a problem when I was 15. Like, this is obviously, I'm still a little crazy. But when 16 came around, that's whenever like life started changing for me. My parents ended up getting a divorce, and that was, they needed to, right? Looking back, like, they're much better off now. But at the time I was like, oh man, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. And, I really kind of dove into the things that I was doing. And this is all hindsight. I didn't realize this at the time, that I was running away, trying to escape, trying to do those things. But I felt just this immense comfort in disconnecting, right? I remember kind of early on, and my story, I apologize if this is inappropriate. My story involves lots of drinking and drugs.
Oh, that's all good.
Don't we all?
Right.
I'm certified alcoholic, always have, always will be, I guess. But lots of drugs involved, right? And whenever my parents split, that's whenever the experimentation, if you will, of all the other things that this world has to offer started to. And once again, I was never scared of it. Somebody always would bring me a new thing. It's like, hey, try this. And I was like, oh, sure, that sounds fun. And then I would either, this is fun or this isn't fun. And typically it was very fun. It was one of those things, whenever it started working for me in that way, whenever I started to use it to like disassociate, that's when I knew there was a few things in this world that's like, I'm going to do that again. And it was probably whenever I was about 16, 17 years old is whenever it really kind of switched for me, I think, looking back. That's kind of whenever I kind of got grabbed by it, I think. Before that, it was pretty recreational weekend stuff. But I mean, we were kids, babies. I remember looking at my nephew whenever he was like 14, making bad decisions. And I was like, oh my goodness, he's a good kid compared to what I was doing, but he's a baby. So I just didn't have any perspective on what I was doing when I was doing it. Moving forward, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. At that point, I'm a daily user, daily drinker. first thing in the morning, right? Like by the time I'm 18 years old, out of high school, working, I was doing some other things to kind of facilitate some income, if you will, with those party favors.
Yeah.
Because I had a really, really, really expensive habit, right? And I was 18 and I didn't make a whole bunch of money. So we're good problem solvers when we want to be.
Yeah.
Really good problem solvers when we want to be. So went off to college because that was a thing that I was told that I needed to do. Was at Louisiana Tech. That kind of exploded what I was doing. I was kind of on my own. I was in an apartment, and it was just a party. It was a blur. It was a party. By the second quarter, I was failing out of all of my classes, and I had to move back home, tail tucked in between my legs, try to get my stuff together. And really, I think that was the first time I made an attempt to like pull things back, because that was the first time I kind of got burned by my behavior. And I would kind of be able to, and I would never completely stop anything that I was doing, but I would kind of tail it back. Okay, maybe it's a weekend thing, or maybe it's this or that, or I won't do it before noon. That was the first time I tried to manage it, I think. Fast forward a little bit more. I'm working for my dad now, going to Louisiana Tech, and that's kind of when things started to fall apart, more or less. 1920, it's everything that I was doing after I tried to manage it just ramped up exponentially. That was the first couple of times where I got dumped out in front of an emergency room because I thought I was dying because of everything I was doing. So I was like, you guys got to basically take me. And so they would drop me off and leave me, right? And then I would end up calling them back. I would like get scared and like, well, somebody's going to find out what this is. And I would like crawl between cars in the parking lot somewhere and call them back. It's like, no, actually I'm fine. It's like, no, I'm actually fine.
I'm just playing.
Psych.
But like in that moment, like I was like, oh, this is it. I'm dying, you know? And I think we've all probably been there once or twice if you used it like I did or drank like I did. And that happened probably 2-3 times, and like overall. Fast forward, mind you, I'm not on scholarship whenever I'm in school. I'm paying for this out of pocket. I'm working at the same time, and I'm failing out of my classes so bad. I get on academic probation, and they said, well, if you get these bad grades again, you're going to be suspended a year. So that happened. I took the year off. I went back to school, and then they said, okay, guy, you can't come to school anymore because you're really bringing down how you're making us look really bad. So they didn't even want my money anymore. Then fast forward till we're about 22 at this time. And I know for a fact, so this is years of me with alcohol all day. This is years of me with marijuana all day. This is years of me with and we're driving to Houston to go find opiates from cancer patients at this point.
Wow.
Like we're going there because these cancer patients can't work, but they're getting overprescribed, and this is how they make their income, right? So we're making trips to Houston to go buy, I don't know, as much opiates as we can.
I mean, wow, that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. It was
People helping people.
Who thinks of that?
yeah, it's like we're doing a service right now. Like I'm helping these people
Not take more than they're supposed to.
Yeah. We got to share, right? And then so this is my life right now. Yeah, I'm working and I'm using, and at this point I'm consumed, right? Like I was hooked. I was probably hooked by the time I was 16, 17. Like I think I was full blown alcoholic at that point. I didn't have the resources of the time to do it all the time. But by the time I'm 19, 20, 21, it's literally my job, right? I'm either doing it, thinking about it, or I'm sick. It's one of those things. And life became pretty miserable in that trap. And I knew that it wasn't sustainable. Like I knew that kind of the whole time. But I was always kind of searching for, let me just turn the lights off upstairs. Let me just go, I didn't want to think, because whenever I wasn't drinking and I wasn't using, my mind raced constantly. And all I thought about was poor, pitiful me, how poor, pitiful my life was, which I made it that way, right? But I didn't know that. Probably did, but didn't care. Still poor, pitiful me. I've been kicked out of school. My parents know about it. They know that I'm up to no good, but they don't really know yet. It's time for Jonathan to make a change. So my best idea, and I was the one that kind of came to the conclusion of, okay, I need to do something different, because I got there because for years the drugs and alcohol did this thing for me, which it worked. And I don't know how to even describe what that means, but they worked. They did all of the things that I wanted them to do. I didn't want to think about poor, pitiful me. I didn't want to think about my life. I didn't want to think about how bad I am with the things that I don't have. And then I started drinking and using, and those things still existed in my head. And I was like, oh, this is not good. And I did that for some months, and I could never find the combination or the dosage or the time or the whatever. And it quit working for me. And I could not escape my life, basically. So my best idea, I had a good friend. He was taking a bunch of opiates. He ended up getting on methadone, then Suboxone. And my best idea was like, hey man, how did you stop? And he hadn't stopped, but he's like, oh, go see this guy and he'll get you on Suboxone. I'm like, oh, great idea. So I do that. And I'm excited because, oh, mind you, I've had a counselor since I was 16 because my parents kept getting me drug tested. So I would go see this woman at CADA, mind you. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know anything about anything, but I was seeing this woman periodically over the years, getting drug tested, failing drug tests, because I was working for my dad. He knew that I was failing it. And she was trying to encourage me. So anyways, I get this bright idea that I'm actually going to do something positive in the right way. And I'm going to get on this medication, because that's what I looked at it as. And I called her up and I said, hey, I'm going to quit. This is what I'm going to do. You know, I was pretty excited that I'm like doing this positive thing, because she's been encouraging me to do this for a long time. She goes, I need you to come see me. And so I go see her, and she goes, well, what gives? And I told her what I was doing, how I was getting on this medication, and how I'm going to stop. She goes, well, Jonathan, I think you need to go to an inpatient rehab facility. And I'm like, whoa, no way it's that bad. Like, and she goes, no, you're going to kill yourself. And I was like, no. Even though I had evidence to indicate that I probably thought that myself too, from these hospital drop-offs, that I was like, nope, psych. So she said, you need to go to an inpatient rehab facility. And like a day or two later, actually, no, it was during that conversation, she goes, I said, okay, well, it needs to have a few things, because guys, I'm 6'5", right? I said, the beds have to be big enough. That's number one. 2, do they have a basketball court? Like these were like my requests. I swear to God, this is real. This is real, because I was hoping like the treatment centers don't have basketball courts. Well, they found one.
They do.
They found one. We got to have recreation. So like they call me. I'm out with my mother. We went to go see, and mind you, she's terrified because I've told her that I'm going to stop using and drinking. Right. So she doesn't want to let, she goes, okay, well, I'm not going to let you out of my sight at this point. So she takes me on like a day date. We go see Inglourious Bastards, and that was in theaters, which is an awesome movie, by the way. And I remember we're at like Fuddruckers down at the boardwalk, and this place calls us, hey, there's an opening. Do you want to go tomorrow or on Monday? And this was like a Thursday, I think. And I was like, Monday sounds great, right? Mind you, like at this point, I've got like debts that I need to pay off because I've been provided with things that I need to disperse amongst the community and repay this person.
Community service.
I was just helping my fellow brethren.
And doing the responsible thing on top.
Yeah, just paying people back. Yeah. So I'm terrified at this point. But anyways, I agree to go like on that Thursday. And I had some good people that helped clear my debts. And I went. And I remember I was terrified. Terrified and excited, but mostly terrified. I went to a place in Rayville, Louisiana. I was thought it was going to be like a week or two. It was not a week or two. I think I agreed to like 30 days. Like I had a choice. I was like, oh yes, I'll go for 30 days. Like it was my decision. Like for some reason, these people know that if they give me a semblance of control, then I'll be agreeable to it. Like if it's kind of my idea. So I go there, and I get after about a week of kind of clearing up and, withdrawals and et cetera, and I kind of wake up a little bit, I think it was 10 or 11 days. I call my parents and I'm like, man, I'm going to stay the whole time if I can, which is a 90-day program. And this is residential. You don't get out. You do get outings eventually, but like no phone calls for a week, et cetera. Like it's very isolated initially. And I got really excited about sobriety. Like that was the first time I was like, oh man, this is cool. I feel good. I'm clear. I remember the first time I'm sitting out there, we're playing cards or something. There's like a bunch of jailhouse crap that happens in a rehab.
Oh yeah.
Like I've played spades prior, but this is like jailhouse spades. And I was like, oh, this is different. These dudes are intense. They also know every card in my hand all the time, which I didn't know how they knew that wizardry. And I'm like, how do you know this? But I digress. I remember sitting outside on like this bench back by this little bayou, and I probably laughed the most genuine laugh I've had in years for like 15 minutes. I laughed so hard it was painful because I couldn't stop laughing. And I was like, oh, this is an emotion. Which, I mean, granted, if you look back at my story, I'm 14 and I've started this process by 16. I'm not using daily, but I'm trying to. And by 18, 19, I am. And this is, I know a lot of people use a whole lot longer, but I'm probably emotionally like a 10 or 12-year-old at this point in time, right? And I remember we're in group and they're asking me how I feel about things. And I'm like, I don't know. And he gave me like an emotion, like a list of emotions. And I would like point at them like fear, anger, joy, and I just didn't know what these things were because I was pretty numb at that point in time. They made suggestions that I go to a 3-quarter house. And I was like, yeah, whatever I need to do. Right. I was pretty on board with it. I stayed 91 days. I did my best to be a good Boy Scout at that point in time. And, I'm 22 years old, right? It was September 3rd of 2009 was whenever was my initial sobriety date. So I get in, I go to a sober living house, cause I agreed to go there for a year, I think. Cause I was like, I'm really going to do this. We're going to meetings 5-6 days a week. And I think I was genuine in my attempt, in the way that I did the best that I could at that time with what I was very undisciplined. I didn't know anything about anything, right? But I was going to meetings. I was calling a guy that I called my sponsor, and I think I tried to do the steps to the best of my ability, but looking back, I didn't, right? But like at that time, I think that was my best effort because like, I was like, well, I'm doing all this other stuff that's different. So I don't really need to do that. But also, like I didn't understand it either. I didn't give that a real opportunity. So fast forward 8 months later, I find myself on a Saturday morning. As soon as I wake up, I text a friend and I say, hey, do you have any, I think we smoked some pot that day, right? And in his mind, I'm not doing any of the hard stuff. So he's like, oh yeah, that's fine, Jonathan, as long as you're not taking some oxy or whatever. So I go over there and it wasn't even a thought, right? And I got loaded again. And this is really the day that my story changes from like just bad and making attempts, but not really knowing what's going on. I remember I'm sitting out on the porch smoking a cigarette, and I remember feeling this like immense shame and guilt because I really did want to stay sober at that point in time. I didn't really comprehend how, and I didn't understand the consistency that was required or the amount of investment required into sobriety. I put a ton of investment into drinking and using. You would think I would know that you need to put a ton of investment into sobriety. So I'm out there and I'm smoking a cigarette and I'm feeling shame and guilt. So I immediately, naturally, go to the store and buy some beer. Yeah. And I get a couple tall boys, and I don't drink them. And granted, I haven't done anything for 8 months, so I shotgun them all three tall. I mean, because that's what we do. I'm in the driveway at my mother's house, mind you, and I'm just downing them. She's not there because that's why I went there, because I needed some like solitude. Granted, I'm living in a sober living house. I leave Saturday morning to go get loaded without a plan on where am I going to stay tonight. Yeah. I had no idea, right? My only thought was, let me just go get loaded and then let's figure out the rest. So I go get, which that's literally never worked.
Generally
ever.
not the mindset to figure things out.
It's like,
Story of my life.
let me get drunk and come up with a plan. But I was still there, right? Like that's, so I do that. And, I did actually, before I left that day, I got a pass. So they knew I wasn't coming home that night to the sober house. Cause I could get a day or two out here and there. And I stayed at my mom's house, my dad, it doesn't matter. So the next day I wake up and I'm shameful, guilty, yada, yada. And, this was the blessing. I call my brother. I've got two older brothers. This one he was living in New York. He still lives in New York at the time. And I called him and I was really like just down. I said, Brian, I got loaded again yesterday and I'm feeling pretty bad about it. And I didn't want to do it, but I did it. And he's at my family day, mind you, in rehab, and they're all like tears, right? And he's there and parents are there and just tears everywhere. And, they were just scared for me. He goes, well, okay, well, this is a little bit different. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, you just called and told me that you got loaded and you've probably never done that before. I was like, oh, well, okay, cool. He made me feel a little bit better. And then he goes, well, why don't you just start over like right now? And I was like, huh? And this is like a novel idea, right? Because for me, if I'm doing something, then that's me forever. Like I was this very, if I'm drinking forever. If I'm not drinking, I was this very absolute. That's how my mindset was, right? And he goes, well, why don't you just start over today? And I was like, oh man, I guess I can do that. Like, why not? And that was the very first time where I got the concept of like, I can restart my day. I can restart anything. And so I called my sponsor at the time. He fired me naturally. He goes, you should probably get a new sponsor. I was like, okay, cool. Which was a huge blessing because the sponsor that I have now is the sponsor that I got that day or that following Monday, I guess. And as far as sobriety goes, I got right back into the program. I got a sobriety chip. Maybe it was that day, or a desire chip, excuse me. Maybe it was that day or maybe it was that Monday. I called my 3-quarter house, the sober living house. And I was like, hey guys, I messed up. I got drunk. I'm not going to be able to be back there. I understand if you guys can't let me back in. And they basically were like, dude, you're being really honest. And they voted and they said, well, if you stay sober this week, we can take you back. So I basically stayed at my parents' house for a week. And they drug tested me. I think it was a few times throughout the week to kind of like see if, and after a week they accepted me back in there. I had been in for 5 months into that 3-quarter house. And the new sponsor said, well, you said you were going to be in there in a year. So let's do, 7 more months in there to get you to that year. And so I did that. And, the sponsor I have now, I've always looked up to him in the way that he does the steps exactly the way that if it's not in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't do it that way, right? It's very by the book. It's very textbook. It's very Joe McQueenie. Anyways, legendary stuff.
Yeah.
And I did the steps and I dove into it and I started prayer and meditation, like the way that you're supposed to do those things. And, my life changed exponentially, but I also realized from my last experience that I can't halfway do this thing. That the way that my mind is, the way that my body is, the way that I am emotionally, spiritually, I have to do this. I have to give this my all if I have any opportunity. And I did that. And, I go through the steps and I'm not really understanding, but I'm just kind of trusting, right? I'm just trusting that, that there's something kind of going on here at play that's going to work. I had to trust that this worked for my sponsor, this worked for other people, so it's got to work for me. And granted, I'm 23 and I'm in a room full of old folks and I'm thinking this is crazy. Like you guys can't relate. So I found young people's meetings. It was really good for me at that time. Got into some service work and, just got involved in the fellowship. Cause I got sober in the city that I partied in. And that was really hard for me because these friends that I had, I felt like I was like on probation, like you're here, but you can't go to this place. You have to check in here. You can't see these people. And granted, I had friends that I grew up with. I've come to find out later on, they were making bets on how long I would stay sober for.
Damn.
But that's,
That makes sense.
It does.
That's the kind of things that I was doing.
So far, I've lost $300 on Matt. So I understand completely.
That's fantastic.
Who'd you bet with? Who's dumb enough to do that?
Myself.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. So, going through the steps, and, I was raised in the church, a little bit, raised Catholic, and, but didn't understand God or spirituality at all. I think I need things to be tangible to kind of understand, our higher power or God as we understand him. And that was the first time that like I was praying with just like praying and then acting as if like that it'll be taken care of for me. And, and it was at that time that God became tangible for me. It was through the steps that God became tangible for me because God was acting in my life in the way that I couldn't do. And then, you get through the steps and then you have this whole perception change, right? Like the way that you look at the world, the way that you look at yourself. This is obviously the way that happened for me. I didn't have this big, massive spiritual experience, but I think my spiritual experience was just my perspective change and then my reliance on God and reliance on the fellowship, right? Mm-hmm. And when those things happened, I was able to discover who Jonathan was. So the Jonathan that came to the program was probably 12 years old emotionally and a clown because like many of us, I acted in ways that I thought you or my peers wanted me to act. Because we go back to as a kid, I just wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be a part of. And I used this radical version of myself as this badge of honor, like, oh man, because I thought that elevated me, right? Doing those things that I was doing and being this party or being this or being able to provide these things for other people that couldn't get it. Like that elevated me and that gave me confidence, which is super crazy, right? That I was looking for confidence in chemicals and drugs and people. And now I find my confidence in God, right? And that's, man, it's incredible. I can't tell you, everybody always, there's this cliche. If I made a list of all the things that I wanted to have when I got sober, I would sell myself short. Man, that's not, no truer words have ever been said. I went back to school, and now I have an amazing career because of it. I met my wife on an airplane in Dallas coming back to Shreveport. I was like a year and a half sober, and we were just talking, and I got a date with her before we landed. That was pretty slick. But we dated ever since, and we got married, and I got kids, and but what changed was I invested in my sobriety. I invested in the program. I bought all the way in, and I bought all the way into these principles and this fellowship. And because I learned pretty early on, without that, I've got nothing. Without the steps and without the fellowship and without God, I've got nothing. So that comes first. Sobriety comes first above all things. And I know that may sound weird for maybe newcomers or people that don't really understand sobriety. It's like, well, what about your family? It's like, well, if I'm not sober, I don't have them. I've literally had conversations with my wife really early on. If you see me drinking, you run the other freaking direction. And I'm not like abusive or angry or anything like that, but I'm up to no good.
And some bad stuff's about to happen.
Yeah, like it's not going to be good. And I've got a 4-year-old son, and my daughter, she'll be 2 in December of this year. And, my wife's never seen me drink. My kids obviously have never seen me drink. And it's those things are some of the greatest things that I could ever do. I have conversations with people, and I'm pretty open about my sobriety. Like people go, this, that, and the other, drinking, and I always make the I'm allergic to alcohol joke. I break out in handcuffs, and people go, they always look at me like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And I'll tell them, I was like, oh yeah, I used to have a problem with drinking. They go, what? And I said, trust me, I know I get it, but I've worked really hard to be like Mr. Rogers, like really hard. This has been an amazing transformation, and I'm proud of that, guys. Like I used to be really proud of like being edgy and cool and hard and like a little bit dark. That's not at all what I want today. I want to be this person that contributes and gives and offers and is of service and is being happy and joyous and free and not worried about this bondage of self and alcoholism. And like I said, now I get to sponsor people now, and I get to bring other people through the steps. And it just looks so different. And I get pride in that now. I get pride in being of service and being helpful. And I think the thing that changed the most between like my first run at sobriety, which is, I mean, hear me out. There's people that are gonna be like, you were only out a day. You're probably not a real, it's just fine. I don't care. But it was really, I just needed like a kick in the tail because I did want to stay sober the first time. I did. I just didn't know what was required. Because I've always been a little bit lazy. You know what I mean? But this program has been like, nope, you have to put your nose down and grind. And at first that's what it felt like. And now it's like, I get to do this, right? I get to be with my friends. I get to be with my people. There's almost never a time when I go to a meeting where I'm nervous. And that's at home groups. That's at meetings out of town. That's it on a podcast, you know what I mean? With people that I've met only a couple of times here and there. Outside of jail. I've known Jill for a long time.
I thought you said outside of jail.
Yeah.
All my homies in there.
Jill seems to know everybody.
Yeah. No,
There's nobody. Yeah.
Well, so like you, John, you're probably maybe the fourth person that Jill's brought in, and I didn't know who I was coming into.
Sure.
And then I get here and go, oh yeah, I've seen him.
Yep.
I've seen him before in a meeting before, once or twice,
Yeah. Once or twice here and there.
And they all say, we've known Jill forever.
Yeah. No, it's exactly right. But and that's kind of the story, guys. It's not, I don't think my story's unique in any way. But what I do know is what worked for me is whenever I put my nose to the grindstone, I worked the steps, and I trusted that you believed in God and that might work for me one day. And then once I got that connection with God, and through the prayer and meditation, it's the opportunity for that spiritual growth, right? I've got a little over 14 years now.
Yeah.
And which is crazy to say. I mean, I went to treatment when I was 22. I'll be 38 this year. You know what I mean? Which is crazy to even like comprehend that. If anybody had ever asked me, would I have time? I was like, oh, maybe, I don't know. But I remember going to one of my very first meetings here in town, and there was a guy, Bill W., which is, he's passed, but
yeah, I know
the local guy.
Big Book Bill, is that who?
No, not Big Book.
That's Big Bill.
Did
B.
he pass?
I think he did pass.
Oh, I didn't know.
Bill W. That's okay.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. But he had like 37 years, and I'm like, dude, that's not real. You know what I mean?
You're just throwing a number
no
out.
freaking way. And then there was another young lady. She wasn't young actually at all, and she had like 34 years, like the next week. And this is at the Southfield meeting, St. Paul's, like.
Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, it was Friday. Oh, yeah, I got there. It was Saturday, and I thought it started at 8, so I got there at 7:45, and I was super late. And then Bill actually walks over with a meeting list and goes, "Here you go, boy," and like, get here on time next time, which was awesome. But yeah, life is amazing because of the gifts that this program's given me. So it's my duty now to share that and spread that. And yeah, I can't believe this is the first time I've told my story ever, but I'm pretty happy about it. I'm happy I could do it here with y'all.
It's a pretty good story.
I mean, I would definitely say it doesn't seem like this is the first time. Like, you nailed it.
Yeah.
I love talking
Well,
about
you're anything like-
myself mostly.
like if you're anything like me, I'm kind of like that too. I wake up at 2:00 in the morning, and all I can do is sit there and tell my story to myself. Should I record this? Man, this is good stuff.
I heard Randy Moss, the NFL player, one time was mic'd up, and he said, "I love me some me."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Boy, I like that. I like that."
Jonathan, did you go to Palmetto?
I did. Yeah, I went to Palmetto. They had, and this freaking blue water in the pictures. It was brown as can be.
I
Full
put
of
golf
gators.
balls into that bayou you're talking about. When my son was in there, and I would take a bag of balls and 2 drivers, and we would go stand on the bank and
That's amazing.
pop balls out into there.
I actually brought that up with the marketing director. I was like, that's a bunch of like bullshit.
Yeah, that's not good at all.
But you actually stay. My son went twice. The
Oh, yeah.
first time after 13 days, he didn't get into sobriety. He packed his stuff and started walking down the road,
Oh,
and I had to go pick him up.
when did he go? I wonder if I was
2000 and he's got 7 years. So
okay. So no, I had a roommate that did
16.
the exact same thing. I was like, oh, that
2016.
sounds familiar. he literally had a bag of golf bag, and he packed that up and he started hiking down the road. I'm serious. This is
it might be my other son. No, I don't have but one. But one of the things you talked about in your story is you worked very hard just to be you.
yeah. Oh man, that was yeah. So that was it. It was I didn't know who I was when I arrived. I had no idea. And that's I think very important. I'm glad you brought that up. I had no idea who I was. So in this journey of the steps, I started discovering that, right? Especially with our inventory and these patterns and the steps for me were designed in almost this perfect way. And I think that's why they work is because I found out exactly who I was and exactly who I wasn't and exactly who I didn't want to be anymore. And then I had this opportunity to change.
Yeah.
And I had this opportunity to change it. And part of it was like faking it till you make it and like going and being of service, because that's not me, guys. Like me and going and doing something for you. But I also found like tremendous joy in that, right? I found joy and I get way more value out of doing something for others than I do it from doing something for myself. And that's real, which is also kind of why I got into my profession. I'm able to kind of help people get a little bit better physically and restore their function in their life a little bit, which is, man, so rewarding. So this journey has given me my life, but it's also given me a career. It's given me a family. It's given me a God, right? Or God. I mean, guys, I got baptized last week, right?
Wow.
Which I felt. I got baptized when I was Catholic, but I was like, I feel like I need to do this again. Like I hit the reset button, and I've been doing this journey for a long time. We joined a church. I know that's not what this is about, but like,
That's fine.
it's my story, right?
Yeah,
it's
sure.
it's my spiritual journey for a long time was like, okay, God, as I'm praying to you and learning about you, that's good enough, right? But recently, I've been like, okay, I've got to do some more growth here. Which the desire for growth is also a new thing for me. The desire to move forward is also a new thing for me. And that's the really remarkable thing, which is really, really, really
I think it's cool too. As long as you've been sober, I've been about 6 years, but talking about those people with 35 years and 40 years, when I had a year birthday, some of that crowd came up to me and said, "Oh, okay." And I'm going, "I made a year. Now what?" And they went, "Now we're going to grow. Now you're going to start building on what you did." And, that first part was just, let's get through that. And that's what I've learned as I go. It's just we're constantly
Growing.
building and growing on what we were at. So I got another question. You said you met your future wife on a plane. Okay. I have this question with sponsees. I've dealt with this myself. So you're a year and a half sober.
That's right.
Well, what did you think about explaining that to somebody? She's not one of us.
Oh,
correct?
no. Good.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
So how do you, because I've had to explain that with the allergic to handcuffs,
oh, man.
And
So
how does that conversation go?
So as much as I cared about what people thought, I think I got to a point at that point in my sobriety where I started understanding that other people's opinions of me did not matter. Yeah. And at that point in time, and I probably came off a little bit strong on the airplane as far as like my sobriety stuff goes, because I told her basically everything on a 35-minute flight to Shreveport. But also sobriety was such a part of me at that point in time. I'm in a year and a half sober. That's all I know. I just got out of a 3-quarter house. I'm trying to go back to school. Granted, I'm probably 25, around 25 at this time. No, just before November. We met in November of 11. Yep. So I'm trying to go back to school, and this is actually how I got my pickup line, by the way, because she went to LSUS, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going back there. I need some networking connections, people." So I got her number. So sobriety was so ingrained in me, and it was such a big part of me that if you needed to be around me or wanted to be around me, then you're probably going to have to understand this, and I'm just going to tell you early on.
I love that.
And at the end of the day, she's doing me a favor if she doesn't want anything to do with that. And I completely understand as well.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Most people are going to be like, that's a little bit too heavy. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at, because I've ran into that in different ways with sponsees, with me myself, you know. And you date or you do whatever, and some folks, and I'm using normal in quotation marks, you know, they go, wait, what? You were doing what? And it's like, yeah. So you have to have that conversation sometimes. And I'm just curious. I like the way you put that. I mean, it's part of our life, and you know, they're doing you a favor. If they're not comfortable with that, it's just cut it off then.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And it goes back to, and I was told pretty early on, the things that come first in my life are my sobriety. Right.
Sure.
So
Has
I
to be.
can't like that. It still has to be first. Even these new relationships, even though I kind of want to see you more often and go on more dates and maybe skip meetings, that's what I want to do. Right. Because you're fun and new and you're beautiful. Right. I way outkick my coverage. I love you, baby. But at the end of the day, especially super early on in sobriety, like I'm still going to 5, 6, 7 meetings a week. You know what I mean? I'm doing these functions like Lacy Paws and these, you know, I'm involved.
Right.
Probably a lot more involved than I am now, besides like sponsorship and maybe doing stuff like this. But without me being sober, I don't have an opportunity to be with her anyways. Right. So, and I'm not saying I shouldn't, and I probably came on a little strong with it, but that was just my perspective. And it's probably still my perspective now, to be honest.
And at that time, it's you know, and even now, it's probably a huge part of your life. But at that time, it's probably everything.
Absolutely.
Like this is
Well, I mean, like, and even in my case today, is still the most important part of my life. And if you're not, I tell people immediately if I date, this is what's up with me, and I don't waste my time.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah.
well, Jill's got a checklist and a pamphlet she hands out. Oh well, it replaced the PowerPoint. When I told her PowerPoint
I'm
wasn't
still
popular.
single, so there you go.
But you know, one thing you did bring up that I'm glad you brought it up because we got to talk about it is most of us attend an AA meeting or a group. We do the AA program, but outside issues and. Even going back to Joe McHugh and doing things by the big book, right? We tell people when we take them through their steps to tell us their whole story. But then for some reason we get to an AA meeting and we say, oh, that's an outside issue. We don't talk. No, we tell our whole story. If our story involves drugs, if it involves whatever, tell it. I mean, I encourage my guys whenever I sponsor someone, man, you got a problem with pot, you got a problem with cocaine, heroin, whatever, bath salts. We're going to talk about all of it, and I think maybe that sometimes we get lost in the alcohol thing,
Sure.
So that's something that, yeah, absolutely, man. That's just a big part. Because I'm going to quit drinking so I can take up a needle. I mean, no.
Yeah.
So very important.
One other funny thing you mentioned, and that I love, and I think it's one of my favorite subjects, is rehab facilities and having people. I work at one, or did work at one. I off and on worked at a couple, and like we had a pool at the one I worked at.
Oh,
they had
man.
it on the website.
Like a gambling pool?
No, like a swimming pool.
Oh.
And the people would show up and they go, when do we get to swim? And I was like, never. You can't even see. You'll never see it the whole time you're here. And
Like an apartment complex.
yeah. And
Palm
yeah. So they've got a lot of tricks up their sleeve, but something else I wanted to ask you, and I don't know how much thought you probably have put a lot into this, but waking up that morning and you went, I'm going to call my friend and get some weed.
You called his friend. I'm sorry. I thought he called you. Called your brother after.
Was
you
it your
drank,
brother or
wasn't
your friend?
Oh, my brother didn't give me weed. No,
it? But you
That's
called your brother
afterwards.
after you drank that one time.
that's exactly right.
But that leading up to, you were how many months sober?
Right at 8 months. Yeah.
8 months. So you were going along pretty good.
I thought so.
And that's what I want to reiterate for folks on here. What do you think led you to that moment where you just eyes pop open? I'm gonna go get high.
Oh, I'm sick, and I wasn't taking my medication, right? And I didn't know that I was sick still. Like I got confident. Okay, I felt really good that I was sober, and I felt so good that I was so sober, and I didn't have to do everything that y'all had to do. right? That was a little bit of pride, right? I'm a little bit different than y'all. I can do this without all the crazy stuff y'all need. I'm a little bit better than still. That's probably what happened, right? And I was praying sometimes. It was inauthentic, right? I think I also became less scared at that point in time. I was far enough away from it to where I the consequences were not real anymore.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wanted to. And at that point in time, if I thought it, I think I had to do it, right? And I didn't tell anybody what I was thinking. And I was like, I don't even know if I thought I could get away with it. I don't know. We didn't get that far. You know what I'm saying? We just got Jonathan Weed now. Like that was it.
Can't
like
think about this too much.
This very primal, like maybe I'll go get high. Sure. And it was the easiest time I've ever had to try to get dope ever in my life. Ever.
Yeah.
It's like beep, 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 beep. Okay, come on. Cool.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. Funny how it works that way in those situations,
That's but it does. I mean, it just cunning, baffling power.
Sure, 100%. And it once again it reiterates that if I'm going to do this thing, if I genuinely want to get sober and stay sober, then I have to do this thing 100%. And I don't know that I had that fear some of the time early on because I still thought I could do it. I think, which is whenever I didn't and I couldn't, it was revealed to me that I needed all of this, and which is a blessing that it was only a day because a lot of us don't make it back.
No, especially in a day.
Man, well, yeah, and I really thought I was gonna do it the first time. I really wanted to. I thought, but the level of commitment to it wasn't where it needed to be.
But you feel any guilt there?
What's that?
You feel any guilt?
Oh, I felt like I spit in the face of all of the people that have been helping me over the last 8 months, and that I lied again. Which is, how many times have we said I'm going to do something and then didn't do it? Right. So that came back. Right. So I would quit telling people that I'm going to try to do a good thing for a long time because they would figure out that I'm a fraud. Right.
Yeah.
So once again, I'm a fraud again. Right. Which is miserable.
And you can't even escape it.
No, you stuck, dude. I was drunk. I was high as hell. Like, it was bad.
You can't even get away from it.
Yeah.
It's just there.
No, it's
But all that being said, fast forward now 14 years, that little moment was probably the moment that propelled you on to.
couldn't agree more.
Had to happen. It had to happen.
I mean, for me, and I don't ever recommend anybody going out and trying it again. I just don't, right? It's too risky. I'd learn from others' mistakes, learn from my mistake, please. But that's my story. And for me, that was the requirement in hindsight. I didn't want that to be my requirement, but it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, you found yourself. I heard you in your story where you found yourself. And so many times I get a new sponsee and one that's never been in the program, never done a step. And one of the first things they tell you on the initial meeting, I have an initial meeting with my guys and let them tell them everything, and then we set up a time to start the steps. And one of the first things they tell you is I'm the type of person that has to see, and the whole time you're thinking you don't know what kind of person you are. You don't have a clue what type of person you are. You're the type of person that makes some really badass decisions based on chemicals. That's the type of person you are. That's how we got here.
Hence, you and I are sitting in a room together.
and I used to be that type of person too.
Yeah.
So, and then you see them at their 1 year birthday. And they don't even talk about that kind of stuff. It's just what they talk about is just their experience, strength, and hope. Finding yourself.
And finding yourself too. And I think with the doing 4 and 5 with guys, doing 5, and we go through all this stuff that we're bad at. But I grew up playing ball my whole life, so I had coaches constantly: football, basketball, baseball, all that stuff. And they would tear you down at the beginning of the year. And then we're going to start building. And so in that process, and I guess it goes back to that, but I always like to look at a guy and go, okay, this is what you do have that we can work with, and identify something positive that they also, because we're not just all, negative. Everybody has something, for the most part, that they bring to the table. And, I like that part. And you brought up the basketball court. I got to say this. My only time I went to rehab, same deal. I roll in. I get to the place. They bring me in a van with a bunch of people. I get out. I'm hallucinating. Okay, like I'm not in good shape. They go, oh, everybody's at health class or whatever, recreation, and I'm like, okay, it's like, okay. So they lead me back there. They open the door and there's a volleyball court. That was our recreation. There was a net that was about 2 feet high off the ground, like it would hit you in the belt. There's about 80 people playing volleyball on one court. All kinds of, every type of person. All 80 of them had a lit cigarette in their mouth while they were playing volleyball. And I was like, damn, these are my people right here. Like, a bunch of healthy bastards,
Good thing it wasn't like
let me
the
get a
brochure.
smoke. I'm in, guys. So, yeah, I loved it, man. I was like, I think I'm with my people here.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of your people,
uh-oh.
Matt, you're telling your story on September the 21st
Yes.
at
yes.
1:30 p.m.
1:30 p.m. I prefer that to a.m. these days.
Yeah, I mean, you like a midnight, the midnight mass.
Yes.
Of Matt.
So,
Tell it. You got. I got it right here.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So at 1:30 p.m., Matt L. from Shreveport, L.A.,
L.A.,
Louisiana.
Lower Alabama.
Yeah, Laura. It's actually you're telling your story at the Sweet Tooth auction
Yes.
for the Upstate Convention.
Yes.
For a fundraiser for the Upstate Convention. And it says meat will be provided. Please bring covered side dishes or dessert.
That's what they do over there, I guess. They just they just bring the meat.
Bring your side dishes.
Well, I guess you bring the bread and the condiments, and they're going to provide the
Yeah,
meat.
like a church.
That's why they
thing.
got you over there, man.
Hey,
Like,
look,
we got the meat.
I'm liking this already.
They
Isn't that
stole
what
Arby's.
Yeah.
They stole Arby's line. But that's at the Rustin Gratitude House. So,
Yeah.
Hope our listeners can get over there.
For sure.
Yeah, that'd
They're
be-
really nice people, and they
to be quite honest with you, the Sweet Tooth auction at AA is unlike any event I've ever seen outside of any organization, because people will spend $500 on a pack of brownies that don't have anything in them but flour, sugar, and brown stuff. You know what I mean? Like seriously,
Chocolate?
They'll buy a cake that someone just picked up at the local grocery store for $100.
Yep.
And fruitcake. No one even
Ooh,
buys fruitcake.
that
And they do it.
never happened.
They do it. They
no
do it
one
at
buys
Sweet Tooth auction.
fruitcakes.
Yeah.
I know one guy who likes fruitcake, and he's an absolute animal in life. So that explains a lot. He loves it.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Believe it or not. He's the only person I know. I thought Ben, right?
Yeah.
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 Ben eats fruitcake?
Ben will eat weird stuff.
And
like-
Ben was asking one time, we had a get together at the club, and Ben was like, "Where's the fruitcake?" And I'm like, "He's walking around here somewhere. You'll find him. He usually seeks you out, Ben."
Yeah, Ben doesn't discriminate, man. He'll eat anything.
Yeah.
So
So, but anyway, Matt, I hope everybody gets over there to see you.
yeah, it'll be fun. And looking forward to it. Try to go do stuff when we're asked to do it.
And I'm gonna try to get over there. I'm gonna try.
Don't bring meat, bring vegetables, I guess.
And that's
Whatever.
That's a flight from Dallas. That's probably a 37-minute flight from Dallas. So
Probably.
it gives me time to find my next girlfriend as well. So no, I'm just funny.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
It takes me longer than 37 minutes, months, or years. Thank you for coming by and
Yeah.
telling your story, man. I do appreciate it. Jill finds some of the best people to tell the story, and by far, the people that come on that Jill finds and brings, they're the listenings just go through the roof.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Grouchandbrainstorm.com. Just grouchandbrainstorm.com. Jill couldn't even find the website. And I had to text her a link.
A lot of people that know me will not be surprised.
You'll see Matt's flyer on the website if you go to the website here recently. I update every day. I update the readings. I've actually got to do that now, but I update the readings every day, and it's just the 24-hour day and the daily reflection. I do have some video coming, and that'll just be me making announcements such as Matt's telling his story, and then we're going to also have a page for flyers that just have stuff like this that flyer Matt that email me, and he Also tried to figure out how to email me flyer, and he couldn't email.
Email guy.
Which explains why I'm here with the box, and no one else is over here with the box. So, but no, I do. Anybody that wants to find out what's going on, I try to post what episodes we got coming and when they're coming out on the website, grouchandbrainstorm.com. So that's where you email us. That's where you find us.
It was about a year ago. I was talking to a guy on the phone, and he's like, "Hey, I'm sending you a picture of this, something for work." And I was like, "Okay, let me hang up, and I'll look at it, and I'll call you back." He goes, "Hey, old man, you can look at it while you're on the phone." I was like, "When did they start doing that?" That was a year ago. So,
Well, Matt had a flip phone back then.
yeah, I did.
So he shut the phone and then kept trying to look at the picture. And it
Yes,
didn't work.
yes, I struggle. In
Damn that
electronics.
Motorola.
That's right.
So anyway.
Had an antenna on it.
So anyway, we have been at Rule 62 Studios. Been a wonderful episode, and it'll be out a week from Sunday. I don't know the date on that. What date is that? That is the 9th, somewhere in there. September the 9th?
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
8th.
September the 8th, this episode will come out, and I'll post that on the website as well. So from Rule 62 Studio in Bossier City, Louisiana, this has been The Grouch and the Brainstorm.